Dr. Kinnim today.
Yeah, Kinnim.
Okay. Um, this is base hay. If there was a contest bird over here and an older bird over there and an undesignated pair in the middle, and then there flew from the middle pair to the two sides, one bird to this side and one bird to that side, nothing is lost. Rather, he should say, this bird which went to the katos should be a katos, and that bird which went to the kolo should be an ola. If a pair of birds return to the center, those in the center must be left to die. Those which remain in the position of the katos should be offered as katos, and those remain in the position of the ola should remain as ola. If a pair of birds repeated and flew from the center pair to each of the silent groups, then all of them must left to die. One may not bring turtle doves to be paired with young pigeons, nor young pigeons to be paired with turtle doves. How is this? A woman who first brought her katos offering with a turtle dove and then brought her ola offering with a young pigeon must repeat and bring her ola with a turtle dove. And if she first brought her ola offering with a turtle dove and then she brought her katos offering with a young pigeon, she must repeat and bring her ola offering with a young pigeon. But Azza says we follow the species of the first offering. A woman who brought a katos offering after childbirth and died, the heirs must bring her ola offering afterward. If, however, she brought her ola offering and then she died, the heirs do not bring her katos offering afterwards. In what cases are the previous things said? When a Kohen inquires, but with a Kohen who does not inquire, if there was one pair of obligatory birds for this woman and one pair for that one, or two pairs for this woman and two pairs for that one, or three pairs for this woman and three pairs for that one, or if he made them all above the red line, half of the mingled offerings are valid and half of them are invalid. If he made them all above the red line, half of the mingled offerings are valid and half of them are invalid. If he made half above them above the red line and half of them below the red line, of those offerings which are made above the red line, half are valid, half are invalid. And of those offerings which are made below the red line, half are valid and half are invalid. If one woman has one pair of obligatory bird offerings, and another woman has two such pairs, and another one has three such pairs, and another has 10 such pairs, and another one has 100 such pairs, if the Kohen made all of them above the red line, half of the mingled offerings are valid, half of them are invalid. If he made them all of them below the red line, half of the mingled offerings are valid, and half of them are invalid. If he made them above the red line and half of them below the red line, the number of pairs in the largest group is valid. This is the rule. Every situation in which you can divide the pairs in a way that one mingled bird offerings will not be both above the red line and below the red line, then half of the mingled offerings are valid and half of them are invalid. And any situation in which you cannot divide the pairs other than in a way that one mingled bird offerings will both be above the red line and below the red line, the number of pairs in the largest group is valid.
Okay. Now, remember yesterday I was asking the question and left it with the tzarich eon about like, okay, so all very well that they're half valid and half invalid, but what's the remediation? Because a chatas, you can't bring a chatas if you don't have an actual obligation.
Right.
But that's so I have to correct myself because I found out from some other people I asked around and they corrected me. And honestly, we should have known this, that you can bring a bird chatas out of doubt. And we had that situation earlier in when we had the situation of a woman who had a suffix birth. She wasn't. It was a suffix if it was if it was a real baby or if it was just some clump of cells, whatever that wasn't really a baby. But whatever the case is, she had a miscarriage and she doesn't know if it was actually a baby or not. And now what she does still have to bring her korban yoledes, but because it's a suffix, the ola is fine. The ola can go onto the mizbeach always, right? Because you can bring a voluntary ola, but the chatas, which normally is eaten by the kohanim, is its blood is thrown, but it's not eaten. So a bird chatas is allowed to be brought from suffix, whereas if you have a behema chatas, which typically would come from a situation. Well, let's just say there are two places where the suffix could be. One is there's a suffix if you were chayav in the chatas or not. Now, normally, what happens when you have a in your classic case of you're not sure if you have a chatas obligation or not, like let's say he's not sure if he ate shuman or chalev. So we dealt with that Krisos. Right? When he's not sure, then what does he bring? He brings a korban olive. He brings what's it, the asham taloi.
Right.
Well, asham taloi, that's for the suffix of a chatas. Okay, but that's for a case where A, you're not sure if you did the chait, and B, it's got to be something that's that you'd be chayav to bring a chatas for. Okay, but what happens if you're not sure if your chatas was brought properly? Like, let's say you brought your chatas, a behema. If you brought the behema and the coin shechted it and it and another one, and he said, well, actually, now that I think about it, having sprinkled the blood, he said, I had the wrong kavana. I did this. I did this. I'll shame that it was going to be an ola or something like that. And so he comes clean after, but I'm not sure if it was your one or if it was your friend's chatas that I messed up. So in that particular case, you can't bring another chatas out of doubt.
Uh-huh.
You have to say, okay, I did what I did, and you can't bring another chatas behema. But what you could do is bring a chatas off. Okay, because of the safek, and say, okay, this is the chatas off. It's being brought out of safek, and they'll bring it and they'll throw its blood, but they'll put it away to become nosar.
Chatas off like a chicken. Chicken?
You can't bring a chicken on the mizbech.
I know. I'm sorry. Off is chicken. So
No. That's in modern Hebrew.
Oh, okay. All right.
Off is bird.
Off is bird. Okay.
Right. So off in modern Hebrew parlance. Off is a chicken. Yes, but the technical term off means a bird.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Okay, so that's just to put in our memory banks, that when we're talking now about when we see that some of the korbanos are kosher and some of them are not, the ones that are not need to be supplemented with korbanos that are being brought besafek, because it is possible that they actually were brought properly. Okay, so moving on with our situation of messed up situations. Chatas lezo ve'ola lezo. Okay, so two women come, but this time each one has got a specified bird. This one is bringing a chatas bird, and this one is bringing an ola bird. That's it.
Right.
It's not a pair. Okay. Asa kulan lemalan. Now the Kohen took them and assumed that they were both olos, and he brought them above. Well, this is an easy one. Mechza kasha, mechza pasel. So it's very easy. The woman who brought the chatas bird, she got messed up, and she has to bring another chatas. Vadai. Okay, that's not even a safek anymore. Kuran lematan, mechza kasha, mechza pasel. Obviously, if you brought them both below, then half a kasha and half a pasel, and the woman who had to bring the ola has to bring another ola. Now he took them and he assumed that they were unspecified, and he didn't realize that one had been designated already as an ola and one already as a chatas. So it's possible he 50-50, he got it right, 50-50, he got it wrong. Okay. Shtehen psulos. Now we have to assume that he got it wrong. Okay, because it's possible that he got it wrong, and since it's possible that he got it wrong, then these two women need to bring their birds again, and again out of safek. So the woman with the ola has no problem, but the woman with the chatas has to say, "I'm bringing this chatas out of safek because it's possible that my previous one wasn't brought," and then they know that the kohanim mustn't eat that one. Okay, that was an easy enough one. Okay, that was easy enough.
Okay.
Okay. Now, hold on to your hats. Valid. Chatas ve'ola. Okay, so the two women. Okay, I'm going to have to bring a whiteboard again because the case is going to get complicated again. Just a sec. Let me just get your face onto my screen again. Where are you? There you are. Right. Okay. Whenever I do a screen share on Zoom, the camera of the other person just disappears underneath some other window. Okay, so now each so now there are two women in the story. Okay, Rachel and Leah. So I'm going to draw two little circles over here for each. For now, these two circles represent the birds that each woman is bringing. Now, what did they bring? Rachel wanted to bring a you know what? I've done this wrong. Let me change this. Boom, boom. It's a Venn diagram. Rachel and Leah are friends, sisters, whatever you want.
Right.
Okay, and they each had to bring some offerings. Now, Rachel needed to bring a Rachel needed to bring a. I'll tell you. Let me just tell you the story outside, and then we'll see it inside the Mishnah.
All right.
So Rachel needed to bring a pair of birds, and she also needed to bring an ola. And Leah needed to bring a pair of birds, and she also needed to bring a chatas. Okay, so they went in together, and Rachel bought a bird that was already a chatas, let's say, and Leah bought a bird that was already an ola. And between them, they also, because they had separate obligations that they needed to bring,
Right.
and also between them, they brought an unspecified pair of birds, and they brought another pair of birds that they decided for some reason to specify. Why? Don't ask why. They did.
All right.
Okay, so they had everything all neatly organized. Okay, but this bird was definitely going to be for Rachel, and this bird was definitely going to be for Leah, and the ones in the middle were going to be determined by the Kohen at the time that he sacrificed them. But they did designate one as a chatas and one as an ola, and the other two they left undesignated. Okay, this is like the groundwork over here. So that's the chatas for ola for the Kohen took all this lot and said, wonderful, 6 birds. It's up to my discretion what I'm going to do with them. So the message didn't get through to the Kohen. They didn't communicate properly, whatever. And the Kohen randomly took birds and offered them. I said, let's say in case A, he said, okay, well, I mean, you've got 6 birds and everyone wants to bring olos. I'm going to give them all as olos. Okay, well, if they're given all as olos, the answer is going to be very simple. Whenever you bring all on top or all on the bottom, then for sure half of them are going to be okay. Okay, mechza kasha, mechza pasul. Because of course, if it's an ola, this one's going to be okay, this one's going to be okay, and one of these two is going to be okay. Okay. Kuran, and of course, if you gave them all as chatas, then the same thing applies. This one will be okay, this one will be okay, and one of these two will be okay. Okay. Now, what happens if he says chetzion lemalan or chetzion matan? Okay, so if the Kohen says, okay, these are 3 pairs of birds, I'm going to go 3 above and 3 below, and he thought they were all undesignated, and turned out that actually only 2 birds were undesignated. So if he did, so when we have a situation like this where everything was where you have this half above and half below, the best case scenario is not the one that we're looking at, because best case he got everything right by random chance. We need to look at what's the worst case scenario of how things could have turned out. And the worst case scenario is, let's say this one was above. I'll just do all the aboves up here. These 2 got put above, these 2 got put below, right? Because I've used the star to designate an ola because the stars are above, it's supposed to be below, and the heart is down, so it should have been down. And then what's left is one of these is over here. So these are the only ones that are actually going to be okay. That's our worst case scenario. We're going to have 1 pair of birds being okay. Let's see that in the Mishnah.
But they're gonna the undesignated ones are the ones that are going to be okay. The other ones are not.
Mhm.
Okay.
So,
All
so
right.
if he did chetzion l'malan, chetzion l'matan, and kasher elistoma, the only kasher pair is the unspecified. Because
Right.
for sure, because even in your worst case, you got one above and one below, which is fine. Okay, so now the loss over here is going to be divided between the two women. They're going to have to come back and replace two olos and two chataos. Okay, not so bad. We got this one.
Yeah.
That's the end of Mishna Daled.
All right.
Okay. Kinnim can make your head spin, yeah. Okay, fine. We're on to next case in Mishnah Hay. Katas shenis arva b'chova. Okay, so now a chova is
Before you go on, why would they just bring undesignated birds? Why do they have to
it's
mess
best
everything?
the best way to do it is bring undesignated, because then the coin can do with them as he sees fit. And the coin can be the one who decides which is an ola and which is a chatas. If you designate them, that's where the troubles begin. Because then your communication gets mixed up with the coin. He brings the one that he thought was a chatas as an ola, and vice versa. That's when things get messed up. So if you ever have to bring a bird offering to the Beis Hamikdash, don't specify which bird is which. Just get the birds, give them to the kohen, and let him do the job.
All right.
Okay. Mishnah Hay. Chatas shenis arava b'chova. Okay, so again, we've got a chatas, which we always say is a heart. Okay, and it got mixed up with a chova. A chova group meaning that it's two unspecified birds. Chova,
Right.
Legochi thing, so we haven't specified it. We just know there's a chatas among these three. Ein kasher elaminyan chatas shebechova. So now, if if you're asking the question lechatchila, what can I do with this group? Well, you certainly can't offer any of them as an ola, because it might be the chatas that you're putting out. So what can you do? You can bring one chatas. Because as soon as you bring one chatas, you have to be concerned. You can't bring two, because what happens if this one got brought as a chatas? Then maybe you're going to wind up bringing this one also as a chatas, and that would be bad, because this one's automatically become an ola as soon as you brought this one as a chatas. Okay, so it's always the number of chataos that are in the chova that you're allowed to bring. So let's say this chatas got put into here. Let's say it was in a group of two chovos. So now how many can you bring? You can bring two. Worst case, this is what happens. You bring these two, and then these two are automatically olos. So you can't bring any more, because now it's a chatas mixed with olos. So that's what the Mishnah is telling us. The only amount that can be kosher is the amount of chataos that are in the chova group, which is the unspecified group.
If you put the two undesignated ones down down, and you put the other ones are olas. So what happens to the other heart? What is it?
It might have happened that you did this.
Right.
We don't know which is which. Okay, but since we don't know, we can't assume that we brought the actual chatas down here, and these three birds over here are going to have to be left to die, because maybe the situation is this, and then automatically these two have become olos. So these birds are going to have to be left to die.
My mind doesn't. I can't accept that, because I bought these two. These are two birds are chatas. These two birds are olas. What's the big deal?
But we don't know. The problem is that you're looking at this from the MS. But really, what's happening is here, I don't know what the heck these birds are. I just know that somewhere among them is a chatas, so I can't bring any olos, because I might accidentally take the chatas one as an ola.
But it becomes a chatas because you decided that's a chatos. You've made it a chatos.
Because it was already designated as a chatas before. Over here, everyone was happy, right? We had two pairs of birds that were unspecified, and we were doing fine. And then somebody came and said, okay, this bird is a chatas. And then it flew away and landed in this group over here. And now we're in trouble.
Right.
Okay, so now, chova shnayim b'chatas. What happens if there are more if a chova is twice as big as the chatas, then you'll find mechza kasher, mechza pasol. So you're going to be able to bring half of these are going to be kosher and half of them are going to be pasol because well, I mean half of the chova group is going to be pasol, because we can only bring the ones that we know are the ones that half of the ones that are of the type that we know, like the chatas over here. The chatas shnayim bechova. What happens if your situation is that your chataos are more than your chova group? So let's say there was a group of chataos, right? And these all got mixed up with a chova group. So how many are we allowed to bring? Again, only 2. So the Mishnah says we haminyan shebechova kasher. Only the number of birds that there are in the chova group can be kasher, because as soon as we've taken 2 of these, then these 2 automatically become olos.
Oh, right.
And we can't bring, and because this is all mixed up, we can't bring any olos because this is a group of that where chataos have been mixed in, and we can't take the chance that maybe an ola got mixed, that maybe we're taking a chatas as an ola. Okay, and the same thing. It's nothing special about chatas. We just took chatas as an example, but it would be exactly the same if a bird that had been designated as an ola had been mixed up in a chova group. And kasher elaminian olos shebechova. You can only take the number of olos that are equivalent to the number of pairs of birds in the unspecified group. Chova shnayim ba'ola mechza kasher mechza pasel. What happens if it's just saying the same thing over again, just in the context of an ola. Half of them are kasher, half of them are pasel. Ola shnayim b'chova haminyan shebechova kasher. We're just saying exactly the same thing that we said about the chatas group, about if all of these birds here were olos and they got mixed in. But to say that there's a perfect symmetry between the 2 of them, and don't get hung up on the fact that we're picking on chatas. Ola, it's all equally applicable to the Ola. Okay, so tomorrow we will be finishing Kinnim, giving us a Hadron Alach, and moving on to Kalim.
Oh, another easy one. Okay.
Okay.
All right. We are on Midos. Midos Gimel Vav. No, Gimel Zion.
Yeah.
The entrance to the antechamber, its height was 40 amot and its width was 20 amot, and 5 decorated oak beams were above the entrance. The bottom beam was wider than the entrance by 1 amot on this side and 1 amot on that side, and 1 amot on this side. The beam above was wider than the first beam by 1 amot on this side and 1 on that side. It is found that the uppermost beam was 30 amos, and a row of stones was between each and every beam. And beams of cedar were fixed between the wall of the hakel and the wall of the antechamber, so that the wall should not buckle. And chains of gold were attached to the ceiling of the antechamber, which young Kohanim would climb up and see the crowns as it stayed in Zechariah. The crowns were remembered for Helen, for Tobiah, for Udiah, and for Cain, the son of Zephaniah, in the hakel of Hashem. A golden grapevine stood at the entrance of the hakel, and it was suspended above wooden poles. And anyone who donated a leaf or a single grape in a cluster of grapes would bring the donation and hang it on the golden vine. Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Rabbi Tzadok, said there was once an incident where 300 Kohanim were appointed on this account. The entrance of the hakel, its height was 20 amos and its width was 10 amos, and it had 4 doors, 2 on the inside, 2 on the outside, and it was Kezkel. There were 2 doors for the hakel and 2 for the Holy of Holies. The outer doors opened into the entrance to cover the thickness of the wall, and the inner doors opened into the hakel to cover the area behind the door. The entire hakel was plated with gold, except for the area behind the doors. Rabbi Yehuda said both sets of doors stood within the entranceway, and they were like a mita, as far as they folded back on themselves. The outer doors occupied 2.5 amos, and 2.5 amos, and the inner doors occupied 2.5 amos, leaving half an amma for the doorpost on this side and half an amma on the doorpost on that side. As it stated in the Kesel, that there were 2 doors for each one of doors, ranging 2 swinging doors, 1 for one door and 2 doors for the other. The great gates had 2 minor doorways, one in the north and one in the south, and the one in the south no man ever entered. The reason for this is
hold on. No, you've overshot.
Overshot? Okay. All right, sorry. Go.
Me'ila, Aleph Dalet.
The blood service of the Kodesh Kedoshim affects the offering of both leniently and stringently, but the blood service of Kedoshim Kalim affects it only stringently. How so? Regarding Kodesh Kedoshim, before the throwing of the blood altar, the sacrificial parts of the meat are subject to Me'ila, and the throwing of the blood, the sacrificial is still subject to Me'ila, and the meat is not subject to Me'ila. For both the sacrificial parts and for the meat, now is now liable or pigul, noser or tame. In the case of Kedoshim Kalim, it only affects the offering stringently. How so? Regarding Kodesh Kalim, before the throwing of the blood, the sacrificial parts of the meat is subjected to the Mila. After the throwing of the blood, the sacrificial parts are not subject to the Me'ila, and the meat is still not subject to the Me'ila. For both the sacrificial parts and for the meat, and one is now pigul, one is nosa and tame. It emerges that the blood service of Kedoshim affects the offering both leniently and stringently, but the blood service of Kedoshim Kalim affects it only stringently. The bird katos is subject to Me'ila from when it is consecrated. Once it undergoes Malika, it becomes prepared to be disqualified through contact with the Tevel Yom. Through contact with the Makusa Kapurim, or through remaining parts its time. Though remaining past its prime. Once its blood is sprinkled all liable on account of pigul, noser, tame, and no longer subject to Me'ila. The bird are subject to the Me'ila from when it is consecrated. Once it undergoes Malika, it becomes prepared to be disqualified, though contact with the Tevel Yom, through contact with Makusa Kapirim, or through remaining past its time. Once it squeezes out its blood against the altar, one is liable to count for pigul, noser, and tame, and it remains subject to Me'ila until it goes out to the place of the ashes.
Okay. That's that. Chulin. Base.
Finish schooling today? Yeah, we finished it. Cooling. We have Yud Gimel. If a ground
no, stop. We're in Chulin base. I think you're in the wrong Masechta. You're in Bava Metzia. Bring Chulin out before.
Yeah, because I had them. Okay. Cooling base. If one slaughters two heads at once, his slaughtering is valid. If two hold a knife and slaughter, even if one is above and one is below, his slaughtering is valid. If he severed the head with one strike, it is invalid. If it was slaughtering and severed the head with one stroke of the knife, and if the knife measures the width of one neck, it is valid. If it was slaughtered and severed two heads with one stroke, and the knife measures the width of one neck, it is valid. When does the ruling apply? Only when he made a forward stroke without a backward stroke, or if he made a backward stroke without a forward stroke. But if he made a forward stroke and then a backward stroke, however short it was, even with a scalpel, it is valid. If a knife fell and slaughtered, even though it is slaughtered in the normal fashion, it's invalid. As it's stated, and you shall slaughter, and you shall eat. What you slaughter, you shall eat. If the knife fell and he picked it up, or if his clothes fell and he picked them up, if he sharpened the knife and became fatigued and his companion came and slaughtered, if he paused as long as it takes to slaughter, it is invalid. From Shimon says, if he paused as long as it takes to examine. If one severed the esophagus and tore the trachea, and if he severed the trachea and tore the esophagus, or he severed one of them and waited until the animal died, or if he thrust the knife under the second organ and cut it, we have a Yeshiav says it is nevertheless, it was nevela. Rabbi Kiva says it was treifa. It stated a general rule in the name of Rabbi Yeshua: whatever became unfit to the slaughtering is never nevela. Whatever is slaughtered properly, but some think else caused it to become unfit, is a treifa. Rabbi Kiva admitted to him.
Okay. That's it. Okay, now we can do Bava Metzia.
If the ground floor and upper story belonging to two people collapse, and the owner of the upper story demanded of the owner of the ground floor that he rebuild it, and refuses, the owner of the upper story may rebuild the ground floor and live in it until he reverses him. But Yehuda says even if this one who lives in his neighbor's property must pay him rent, rather the owner of the upper story rebuilds both on the ground floor and the upper story and puts on a roof on the upper story and lives on the ground floor until he reverses him. Similarly, If olive press, which was built in a rock with a garden above it practically partially caved in, the owner of the garden may go down and sow its seeds below until the other makes a dome for his olive press. If a wall or tree fell into a public domain and damaged, he is exempt from paying. If they gave him time to cut down the tree or demolish the wall, if they fell within the time, he is exempt. After the time, he is liable. Give me my, I'm sorry, did I skip a page?
Yes.
If one wall abutted another's garden and it fell, and he said to him, clear away a stone, to which the other replied, they are yours, but we do not listen to him. And after he accepted, he said to him, here, take your expenses, and I will take what belongs to me, but we do not listen to him. If he hires a laborer to work with him with stubble or with straw, and he says to him, give me my wages, to which the other replies, take whatever you have done for your wages, we do not listen to him. If after he accepted, he said to him, here are your wages, and I will take what belongs to me, we do not listen to him. One who puts manure in the public domain may do so only if one who puts it out, and the one who fertilizes immediately. We may not sow clay in a public domain, nor may one make bricks, but one may need clay in the public domain, but not bricks. One who builds in the public domain may do so only if one who brings the stones brings them, and one who builds immediately. If he causes damage, he must pay for the damage. And Reb Shimon Gamliel says he may even repair his work 30 days before.
Okay. Tomorrow we're gonna move on to Baba Basra.
Right. Okay.
Shkalim Daled Aleph.
Daled.
Hmm.
Daled Aleph.
No, Daled Aleph.
Right. What did they do with the truma? They would purchase daily offerings, additional offerings, and then the sacham, the omer, the 2 loaves, and the pot of bread, and all the public offerings. Those who watch over the after growth of the Shemitah of the year receive their wages from the funds withdrawn from the treasury chamber. Rabbi Yossi says, also one wishing to do so may volunteer as an Ansari watchman. They replied to him, you two admit that they must come from public assets. The red cow, the he-goat, which is sent to Azel, and the strap of red wool are purchased with funds withdrawn from the treasury chamber. The ram for the transport of the red cow, the ram for the transport of the he-goat, which is sent to Azel, and the strip of wool, which is tied between its horns, the water canal, the walls of the city, and the towers, and all the needs of the city are funded for the remainder of the treasury chamber. And Abishol says the Kohen Gadol built the ram for the transport of the red cow for their own funds. What did they do with the surplus of the remainder of the treasury chamber? With it, they would purchase wine, oils, and wine flour, which they would subsequently resell. The profits accruing to the temple, which these are the words of Rabbi She'el. Akiva says, a investment may not be made with that which belongs to the temple, nor with funds collected for the poor. Okay. So we are on to Zavim. Okay, Beit Gimel. Someone who has a seminal mission does not become tummy through a Zavim mission for the following 24 hours. Rabbi Yoshi says only that day. Regarding a non-Jew who had a seminal mission and then converted, he immediately becomes tummy through a Zavim mission. Regarding a woman who has a discharge of blood and a woman who has a difficult labor, a 24-hour period. And regarding the day or 2 days for someone who strikes the slaves, it is a 24-hour period. Regarding a dog who ate flesh of a corpse for 3 24-hour periods, the flesh is not in its natural state. A zav contaminates the couch in 1 of 5 ways. Rendering the couch able to contaminate a man to contaminate clothing, with the zav standing on it, sitting on it, lying on it, hanging on it, or leaning on it. The contaminated couch of a zav contaminates a man in 1 of 7 ways, to the degree that the man will further contaminate his clothing by the man standing on it, sitting on it, or lying on it, hanging on it, or leaning on it, and through contact and through carrying. If a zav and a towel person sat together on a boat or a raft or rode together on an animal, even though their clothes do not touch, the clothes of the towel person becomes contaminated with midras tuma. If they are sat together on a board or a bench or a support beam of a bed or on a pole that is unsteady, if they both climbed up a weak tree or onto a weak branch or a strong tree or onto an Egyptian ladder that is not anchored with a nail, if they went together onto a ramp, a beam, or a door that was not secured with plaster, or in all the cases, they all become tamei. And Rabbi Yehuda rules them tahor.
And that's it for today.
Good. Thank you. Sorry for the little mishap over there.
Worries?
I remember getting up. It was like 2 minutes to 6 or something like that. I remember that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Have a great day.